You know, everybody talks about your first race is that ARCA race at 20 years old, I believe, in Daytona in 1979. I want to talk about that in a bit. But when I look at pictures of your dad and see all the time on social media from the 70s, you were there. You were in the victory. You were there. You were working. You were part of the deal. You were doing whatever you did. You know, whatever you could do. So help me understand. In the day, like I didn't drive till I was 15 or 16. And that seemed normal. Now, everybody's 5, 8, 10 years old. Their kids are racing.
Yeah, you hadn't started Isla yet? You're behind.
I know.
You're behind.
I don't have a suit or anything
I know,
yet.
that fascinates
This is going to be our first race car right here, pal.
And so I know it probably felt completely normal for you to get in a car for the first time at 20 years old and go to Daytona and ARCA race.
Well, I was 18.
Or 18?
Which is a whole nother issue. So here's what happened. Okay, this is what happened.
I guess what I want to know is all through the 70s, when you were a teenager, were you badgering your dad about racing?
All the time. All the time.
What was he saying?
21.
21.
So his dad didn't let him race until 21.
Yeah.
His dad didn't let him drive a car until he was 21 years old. And he had badgered his dad. You know what I mean? But 21. 21's going to be the date.
So
21, that's it. 21, go 21.
Yeah.
You know? So from the time I was... So I got this is crazy. I got my first motorcycle when I was like first grade. Got a motorcycle. But never had a go-kart. Okay? My dad would not let us have a go-kart. And because he said a go-kart will not teach you respect for speed. And a motorcycle will teach you respect because when you think you know everything, it'll put your butt on the ground. You know what I mean? And he's exactly right. I mean, anytime I thought that I got too brave or was too fast, boom, I'm headed to the hospital. I got a broke ankle, I got a broke wrist, I got a dislocated shoulder, you know, that. But so from the time I was little, and I mean, really riding that motorcycle, I'd ride that motorcycle and pretend like I was Bobby Allison. You know what I mean? And Charlie Glotzback was my man.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, man, that purple wing car in the 70s, oh my God, man. Purple, and I mean, it's crazy. When 1970, I will say sidebar here, 1971, my dad won Daytona, won a Roadrunner. Purple. I mean, metallic purple, half white vinyl top, white leather interior, 71 Roadrunner. And that thing was bad to the bone. We'd drive it, I was 10, we'd drive it to the end of the driveway and sit in it, wait for the bus to come, and the bus would pick us up in the morning. Then in the afternoon, we'd get off and get to drive it back down the driveway. So we just drove it all the time. But so when I was 10, I wanted to be Evel Knievel too, because I saw Evel Knievel when they opened up Ontario.
Oh.
So I wanted to be, this was pre-opening up Ontario. So I jumped over from the left side to the right side of this 71 Roadrunner, set the doghouse up and put a piece of plywood on it. My little Yamaha 80, sailed over the roof of that thing. And so I was going to be a daredevil, man. I was going to be Evel Knievel. But I just grew up wanting to drive a race car. And here's what my dad told me, is if you want to drive, and if you really someday, and he told me this when I was 11 or 12, then you need to know how to work on cars. So from the time I would go and I'd sweep the shop, and then they let me start sandblasting stuff. And I'd stand at a sandblaster with my arms in those big rubber gloves and sandblast all day long, man. And then they let me start painting it. I'd get to sandblast it, and then I could paint certain parts. And then they taught me how to magnaflux. So I'd magnaflux it, make sure there's no cracks in it, man. I'd circle them. I'd say, Dale, is there a crack right here? This looks like a crack. He'd wipe that magnaflux fluid off and say, no, that's not a crack. Don't worry about it. You can paint that one. So you do that. So that's what I'd do every day after school. I'd go to the shop, and I'd sandblast, magnaflux, and understand that they would do this. They would bring this car in on a Monday morning, and they would put it up on jack stands, and they would take it apart. Engine would go back to the engine room. They'd take the front end out from under it, the rear end out from under it, and we run torsion bars. These were Dodges and stuff, so you'd run torsion bars and stuff, leaf springs. And all that stuff had to be sandblasted, magnafluxed, and repainted so it could go back on the car by Wednesday to go to the next race, because you only had a couple of sets of spindles and maybe 2 rear end housings. So they would turn a car around in a couple of days and take that same car back to the racetrack. While we were doing all that, then it would be in the body shop, and he would not go to the racetrack without it being touched up
Brand
and
new,
painted
yeah.
and looking good. You know what I mean?
He is a Dale Inman or
My dad.
Or your
My
dad.
I
Yeah,
should
he
know
was
the answer
particular
to
about
this. If you wanted, when they ran the leaf spring cars in the
Yeah.
70s, did you change a leaf spring at the racetrack?
Yeah, but
How
it was
did you do
hard.
that?
It was hard to change the leaf. Most of the time, Dale would just take a leaf out. And you had 16s, 15s, 17s, and they were rated at different numbers. It's a different rate than what a coil spring is.
Yeah.
But you just jack it up, take the weight off of it, and pull a leaf out, whether it was a long leaf or a middle leaf. You
gotcha.
just pull leaves out of it.
Interesting.
And
I never
that
ever
was
asked. I never even thought about that.
You can, if you go back and look at some pictures of my dad, especially in the Roadrunner, in the '68 Roadrunner, and really in the early '70s in the Charger, coming off of turn 2 at Martinsville, that car will be rolled over so much you can see over the left front tire and see the air cleaner on top of the engine. I mean, that's how soft a right rear they would run when they go to Martinsville. But I always wanted to be a race car driver, and so I went to work, and I had to work 1 year everywhere. So I worked a year as a mechanic. I worked a year in the engine shop. I worked a year in the body shop. And once I got out of the body shop, I swore I would never go back and do body work. I coughed up petty blue blood or phlegm for a year. But I worked a year everywhere. So by the time that had cycled through, I was about 17. And the next step for me was to drive. But that wasn't going to happen, according to my dad. So my mom wanted me to go to night school. And
Why?
she wanted me to be a pharmacist. My mom had this dream that I was going to be a pharmacist.
I can see that.
Yeah, I can see.
Can you?
With those glasses.
I can see drug dealer, but I can't see pharmacist. Okay.
With those glasses and that hair and a white coat.
Yeah.
Pharmacist.
She wanted me to be a pharmacist. So I went to night school. True story. I went to night school for 3 weeks, and the dean of the night school, the dean of the school I went to, I won't mention what it is, called my parents and told them they could have all my money back, not to send me back anymore.
Dang.
Why?
What were you doing?
I'd come in and I'd have Bondo dust all over me, or I'd smell like lacquer thinner, because I was working in the body shop at that point. You know what I mean? And I just didn't have time to clean up and go. You just went to school. I didn't go. It wasn't a beauty contest, man. I just went to learn. So we were going through at the race shop. We were going through. My dad was winning races, some, but not a lot. Things began to change. We were switching to Chevy. So we had a Dodge sitting there.
An old Magnum.
An old Magnum, man. Look it up. Twice as big as what the Magnum station wagon that Dodge made in later years. It's an ugly car. So my dad, Steve Mill, you know Steve.
Yep.
Jeez,
So my dad was like, "You guys can, if y'all can get that ready, we'll go test." So we worked.
That
on
was
it.
it.
Got it ready. Yeah. So we got it ready.
How?
Well,
Yeah,
Hold
we'd have to work on it. We'd have to
So-
work on it when it wasn't when we weren't
When
working ready.
when your dad walked up and said that to you, what was your feeling?
I got a warm feeling in my socks because I peed in my pants. Okay, I can tell you that, because it was like, yeah, this is it, dude. You're gonna get to go get in a race car.
Yeah.
He would not let me. A true story. Dale and those guys, they wouldn't let me get in a race car and back it out, and just sit there.
Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing. You couldn't. They wouldn't let me. Now, when I was in elementary school, to backtrack a little bit, when I was in elementary school and stuff, I'd ride the bus home. And if you rode the bus home and got off the bus and you heard the race car running, boom, straight across my granddad's front yard, across that big field out there, straight to the race shop. Because you knew at some point in time, before they went home from work, Dale was going to get in that thing, or my dad was going to get in that thing, and we were going to drive it out the end of the driveway. And we were going to head about 3.5 miles over to the county line and turn around and I can't remember the farmer's name, turn around in his driveway and drive it back and then jack it up, make sure nothing leaked. You know, make sure that all the lines were sealed. And then we'd load it up on the truck and they'd head off to the next race.
So there were folks driving around in Randleman, and every once in a while,
See
they
a
might
big-
see the
race
Dodge,
car?
the
Coming at
Dodge
'em.
Charger coming at
Coming
him.
at 'em.
Must
Coming
have
at
been
'em.
the most beautiful thing.
coming at him. Coming
It
at
had
think
been
of-
just
think about-
beautiful.
Think about being, and I laugh about, because I think about living out there where we live and looking up and seeing that winged Superbird coming down the
God.
highway at you. You know what I mean? Think, oh my gosh, man, aliens have landed
Yeah, right.
here at level cross. So we got that thing ready, and we had an old truck named Clyde. Clyde was a double cab, rollback. You rolled up on it, and the wheels were over the.
Did the Magnum have a name?
No, Magnum didn't have a name. No, we never named it. Clyde always had a name. I don't know why that truck was called Clyde. That's just what they called it.
Must have been a good truck.
Yeah, it was a good truck, man. It was a good truck. So we loaded Clyde up and put that car on it. My dad said, "We'll go to Daytona and test." And I'm like, "Oh man, we're going to Daytona." I'm 18 years old. Never been in a race car in my life. They had a bet I wouldn't run. I think they had a bet I wouldn't run 140 miles an hour the first time around. I think I ran 152 my first lap. At
First
Daytona.
lap.
You know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I am flying. This is crazy. But, yeah, we went down there and we went. This is when you could go to Daytona and you could rent the racetrack for 3 days and you could rent the racetrack for 3 days. So teams would rent it and then you would have to call somebody up. And we ended up going with, crazy story, we ended up going with Goodyear Tire, and they were testing tires with Kenny Roberts for motorcycles. So they were testing motorcycle tires while we were there testing the Magnum.
This is your Disneyland right here, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, man. It was crazy. I'm here with Kenny
I've died
Roberts.
and gone to heaven.
Yeah,
This
I'm
is
here
it.
with Kenny Roberts, and he's doing all this stuff, man. I go out and watch him run, and then I go out and try to make a lap or two. And
Your dad, was he running to his car?
no.
So
No.
just by yourself?
Yeah, just kind of by myself.
it-
He run my car. He took
would
it out.
he drove
took
your
it
car
out
too?
first. Well, here's what I did. All right. I don't know if you ever got into this. So he's like, let's go out. I'm gonna show you around Daytona. Okay. So we take a car cover and we throw it in the right side.
Mm-hmm.
He gets in, puts his helmet on, straps in, tells me to climb in. I should have known at that point in time this was. And we went out and ran like
This is the first Richard Petty driving experience
this
ever.
is very far. We went out in like the second or third lap. We run like 193, and he's like,
You're sitting in there.
and I'm just
nothing.
I'm sitting here on the roll bars like this, and he's like this. Okay, there's a big bump right here, so you don't want to hit this bump. You want to be down, but don't come down this low. This is before they run low.
Yeah.
You know, nobody run around the bottom, man.
Yeah.
You run middle and top. That's where you run. And we'd be right up next to the wall, and he'd just be digging, just wheeling this Magnum, and talking the whole time.
Unbelievable.
And I never thought about it until years later almost, because it was just like, okay,
was
it's
no
my
big deal.
dad. He's telling me what to do, and this is how you're supposed to do
I'm
it.
trying to visualize this.
Yeah.
You particularly.
Yeah.
You're in the car.
Yes.
He's going 193.
Yeah.
What are you hanging on to?
Roll bars.
Just hanging on.
sitting
Really,
on
just
sitting
sitting
on
on
the
a
car
car
Sitting
cover.
on a car cover. Sitting on a car cover.
As you do when you're riding passenger
Yes.
at a
Well, it's,
193.
it's,
That's all you had there.
There's no seat.
There's no seat.
No
man.
seat. What do you
Yeah.
got?
Hard
That's
ass
all.
floor.
So that's what we did, and we tested, and then we went back and raced.
How did that race go? So when there's not, I haven't ever seen any footage of the race.
I'm not sure there is.
All right.
Thank goodness.
And you won the race,
What good?
but you qualified well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It was.
How did your what do you remember?
Here, okay, this is what I remember. Okay, Billy Hagan, who owned Terry Labonte's car at the time, Ron Hutchison, okay, he had a car. Bob Rezak,
Brevac?
I don't know if it was Brevac or what, but anyhow, and a guy named Phil Finney, and Phil's nephew, I think his nephew was a NASCAR official for a number of years. Anyhow, so there were about 5 or 6 pretty good cars that didn't run the ARCA schedule. You know, typical Daytona, let's go run an ARCA race. And then you had Moose Myers and a bunch of these other guys that run the regular schedule, that were the guys running for the championship. And so we went down there, and I think I qualified second or third. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think Hagan may have been on the pole. I don't know. So my dad said, okay, they were like, just kind of fall in line and figure this out. And I think the first time by, I was like 6 car lengths ahead when I came by. The first time, because I was
No way.
I don't want to follow these guys. You know what I mean? I don't want to follow these guys. So anyhow, we run along there, and we run pretty decent. We run probably second, third, fourth, led a bunch.
Yeah.
I mean, off and on, just all over, because we were all
Small little group of
Yeah,
you.
small little group. And little by little, somebody would have some issues or something. And the guy that I do remember this, John Markham ran ARCA, and he told us in the ARCA race, or told us in the driver's meeting, never forget it. He said, we're here for one reason and one reason only. It's to put on a show for these fans who have come to see the Cup stars qualify right after we race. So we have a limited amount of time. We need to get in here. We need to do this. If you stink up my show and pull away, and we get too big a gap, there's going to be a caution. We're not going to let somebody get away.
That's great.
We're not going to let somebody. So I come down pit road, first pit stop, and I got my dad's guys. I leave. I'm like 18 seconds ahead. Boom, caution. I mean, I'm way ahead. I don't know what it is exactly, but I'm way ahead. Caution comes out.
I have an idea why you're ahead. Yeah.
Caution comes out. So we had one green flag stop. I remember we had a green flag. I think we had a green flag stop. I came down and I'd never left the pits. I pop that baby in gear and drop the clutch, and I look like a pro stock car. It just stands up like this, and I don't go anywhere. You know what I mean? I don't, cause tires as hard as this table back then. And my Uncle Marsh was so mad, he threw his stopwatches at me, and they ricocheted off the back and went over the hood while I'm still sitting here, kind of. You know what I mean? It was one of those things. So the guy that should have won the race is Phil Finney. Phil Finney should have won that race. He was the best car. He was they put themselves in position, and they just outrun everybody when it came down to time. But he hit a seagull in the middle of the backstretch, and his windshield caved in. And that's when you run glass windshields. Everybody run glass windshields. People used to hit seagulls all the time in practice and stuff. They'd kind of get away once the racing started, and everybody. But every now and then,
you'd have that dumb seagull. That one
with a death wish, and he would come flying back to check out and see what was happening. And his windshield caved in. I ended up winning the race, I think. And I went into turn 3, and I can't remember who was, but he got to my outside, and because where the start-finish line is, it was just, I ended up beating him back.
Wow, so you had a battle on your hands on to the finish.
Down to the finish, that was it.